I swapped my cheating husband's lube for glue, and the nurses had to pull them apart. That's not just a title. That is exactly what happened. And if you're watching this, please sit down, because what I'm about to say will shock you. My name is Mama Sarah, and I'm 65 years old. I have been married to one man for 42 years. Yes, 42. I gave this man my youth, my body, my cooking, my peace of mind, even my silence. I raised our 3 children mostly by myself while he worked. I cleaned his underwear, made soup even when my back hurt, washed the blood off his shirts when he came back from fights with his brothers, and I stood by him through sickness, job loss, even when he shouted at me in front of our children. I stayed. I told myself that marriage is for better or worse, and I stayed. Even when my heart was quietly breaking, I stayed. I told myself he's a man. Men make mistakes. It's just his way. But now, looking back, I see I was making excuses for bad behavior. I was lying to myself because I didn't want the shame. I didn't want people to say, "Old woman like you, your husband left you?" So I kept quiet. I smiled at church. I served food during family gatherings. I didn't tell my daughters the truth when they asked, "Mama, are you okay?" But let me take you back to when I knew, deep in my bones, that something was wrong. It didn't happen all at once. It was small, like water dripping on your forehead, slowly driving you mad. It started one afternoon when I hugged my husband as he returned from work. I don't know why I did it. Maybe I just missed the old times, when we used to be close. But the moment I hugged him, something hit my nose. A strong smell, vanilla and flowers. I pulled back and looked at him. "Where have you been?" I asked with a smile, trying not to sound suspicious. He laughed and waved his hand. One of the women in the office sprayed perfume everywhere. "It's still hanging on my shirt." I nodded, but I knew that smell. It was not cheap perfume. It was the kind of perfume only young, trendy girls wear. Not the type you find in my world. I wear lemongrass oil. Always have. That night he rushed to bathe. He even shaved his chest. My husband of 65 shaving his chest? For what? He said it was to look neat. I said okay, but my heart had already started to ache. I didn't argue. I didn't shout. I just started to write everything down. The smell, the times he came back late, the excuses, the lies. It became a diary I kept in my head. 2 weeks later, I found a new boxer in the laundry. It was silk, red, bold. My husband wears old brown shorts from the market. This was not his style. I asked him, "Is this yours?" He said, "Of course. I bought it to spice things up." Spice? I laughed, but not from my belly. It was the laugh of a woman who knows she's being taken for a fool. I began to check his phone, but he was careful. He had changed his password. He started locking the phone in the drawer. So one morning, while washing his jeans, I found a small key, just sitting in his pocket. My hands shook as I stared at it. I knew which drawer it opened. The one he started keeping locked 2 months ago. He was out. I opened the drawer. Inside it, I saw a pink bottle of lubricant, hotel receipts, a gold bracelet. Not mine. The lube was small and shiny, like the ones you see on shelves in shops I would never enter. My chest grew tight. The receipts had dates and room numbers. One even said King Suite. King Suite? In this economy? The bracelet was delicate, gold with a small red stone. It looked new. I placed everything back exactly where I found it. Then I locked the drawer again. I sat on the bed and looked at the floor for a long time. I didn't cry. Not yet. I think I was too shocked to cry. I made dinner. I served him like nothing happened. He kissed me on the cheek and said, "You're the best woman a man could have." I almost spat on the floor. I wanted to scream, but I just smiled, because when you're my age, revenge is better than shouting. It's colder, sharper, cleaner, but it must be planned, and I needed more proof. That night I couldn't sleep. I remembered my mother's voice saying, "Don't let any man turn you into a fool, Sarah." but I already was. So I decided no more guessing. I would find out the full truth, and I would act. 3 days later, my friend Mama Chica called me. She whispered like she was telling me a secret. "Sarah, I saw your husband at Galaxy Hotel. He wasn't alone." My hand froze on the spoon I was holding. "With who?" I asked. "Light-skinned girl, curvy, young enough to be your granddaughter." I said nothing. I just nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "She kissed him near the car," she added. I was going to call out to him, but I knew it would only shame you more. I thanked her. My hands were sweating. I dropped the call. My whole body was hot. That night I didn't sleep either. I just watched him snore. This man I gave everything to, sleeping peacefully like he hadn't torn my heart into pieces. He didn't know I had fire in my belly now. I wasn't going to weep into my wrapper and accept shame. No, I was going to handle this the way women of strength handle betrayal. I was going to trap him, but I needed time. I needed to think like a thief. I needed to let him feel safe. That was when he brought her home. I kid you not. My husband brought her into my house. He introduced her as my niece from the village who just got a job in town. I almost laughed in front of them. She smiled too much, wore tight clothes, sat like a queen, wore that same vanilla perfume. I knew, but I said nothing. I let her enter my kitchen. She used my towel. She touched his shoulder and laughed like I wasn't sitting there. They thought I was blind or old, but my eyes were wide open, and in my heart I was already preparing the day I would disgrace them. I just didn't know it would come sooner than I expected. That night I checked his car. I don't know what pushed me. Something just told me, check the car. Under the driver's seat, I found it again. The pink bottle. He must have forgotten to take it back inside. My hands trembled. I held it like it was a snake. I took it into the kitchen. I looked at it for a long time. Then a voice in my head whispered, "Glue!" I smiled. It was the first real smile I had smiled in weeks. I washed out the bottle, refilled it with thick, clear industrial glue I used to fix broken chairs. It was sticky, permanent, dangerous. I wiped the edges. I cleaned the cap. I even made sure it smelled the same by adding a tiny drop of oil. I put it back exactly where I found it, and I waited. I didn't know when. I didn't know how, but I knew the day was coming. I just had to be patient, and when it came, oh, it came loud. I didn't know when. I didn't know how, but I knew the day was coming. I just had to be patient, and when it came, oh, it came loud. 3 days after I switched the lube for glue, my husband was extra cheerful. Too cheerful. He wore his best shirt, the one I bought for our 30th wedding anniversary. He ironed it himself, humming. He brushed his teeth twice, wore cologne, shaved, and for the first time in a long while, he asked me, "Mama Sarah, how do I look?" I looked up from my Bible and said, "Fine, like a man going to war." He chuckled. He thought I was joking. I wasn't. He didn't eat breakfast, just kissed the air and said he was going to the barber shop. Barber shop? On a Sunday morning? I smiled as he left. Not a fake smile this time. A smile that came from my bones. I sat back in the chair and waited. I didn't call him. I didn't move. I just waited. An hour later, my phone rang. I looked at the number. It wasn't saved. My heart jumped, but I picked up. "Is this Mrs. Sarah?" a panicked voice asked. "Yes." "Please, madam. We're calling from General Hospital. Your husband, there's been a small emergency. Can you come quickly?" I said, "I'm on my way." But first I took my time. I didn't rush. I went to the bathroom, bathed slowly, rubbed powder on my neck, wore a clean wrapper and my church blouse. Then I picked my bag and walked out with peace in my heart. I knew what the emergency was. I didn't need to ask. I got to the hospital and told the nurse at the front desk who I was. She looked at me strangely. "You're the wife?" she asked. I nodded. She didn't hide her smirk. "Room 7, the emergency room." I walked through the corridor. smelling antiseptic and confusion. Then I entered room 7, and my eyes nearly watered from the sight. There he was, my husband, naked under a hospital blanket, sweating, groaning in pain. And beside him, that same young girl, half naked, her hair a mess, her mascara running, her body shaking like she saw a ghost. A nurse was talking to a doctor in low tones, but I heard enough. "They used glue," the nurse whispered. "They're stuck. Down there. We're trying to separate them, but it's dangerous." The doctor sighed. "This is the 3rd time this month. But this one, it'd be like say the glue strong past normal." I couldn't help it. I burst into laughter. Not loud, but deep. The kind of laughter that heals you. The nurse turned and saw me. "Madam," she said, confused, "you're the wife." "Yes," I replied, "the legal one." She didn't say anything else, just nodded and stepped aside. My husband saw me. His eyes widened. His mouth dropped open. He tried to speak, but winced in pain. "Sarah, please, please help me." I looked at him and tilted my head. "Help you? Like I helped you for 42 years. He tried to sit up. "It's not what you think." "Oh, it's exactly what I think," I said calmly. "You've been cheating on me with this little girl, bringing her into my house, lying to me every day, and now you want help." The girl started crying. She covered her face. "I didn't know he was married. He said you were dead." I raised my eyebrow. "Really? Dead?" I turned to him. "You told her I was dead." He looked down. He had no strength left to lie. I didn't think it was just something to make things easier." I chuckled. "Oh, it's okay. You'll be fine. Just let the nurses separate you. They're professionals." He gritted his teeth. "Sarah, please, don't disgrace me like this." I bent forward, whispered in his ear. "You disgraced yourself the moment you brought her into our bed. I'm just the audience now." Then I stood tall and turned to leave. The nurse touched my arm. "Do you want to wait outside? They'll need you for some paperwork." I nodded. "No problem. I have time today." I stepped into the hallway and sat on a bench. People passed by, some looking into room 7 with curiosity. I didn't care. Let them look. Let the world see. Let them hear. For years, I suffered quietly. But today, silence was not my portion. After a while, a young nurse came out holding a small bag. "Madam, please, we were able to separate them with a surgical procedure. They're both okay, but, the glue caused some injuries." I smiled. "So sorry to hear that." "They'll need to rest here for a few days," she added. "Of course," I said. "They'll have each other for comfort." The nurse looked confused again. "Sorry, do you want us to register you as the next of kin for the young lady too?" I laughed. God forbid. I left the hospital and went home, alone. The silence in the house welcomed me like an old friend. I sat on the couch and thought of everything. The years, the lies, the wasted prayers. But strangely, I didn't feel broken. I felt free. I felt like I had been carrying a sack of rocks on my back for decades, and now someone had finally cut the rope. I made myself a cup of tea. I didn't cry, not even once. My phone buzzed later. It was a message from one of my daughters. "Mama, what's going on? We heard something strange about Papa." I replied, "Call me when you're free." I wasn't going to hide the truth. Not anymore. Later that night, my second daughter called. "Mama, is it true that Papa was caught with a girl and they had to call doctors to separate them?" I stayed quiet. Then I said, "Yes, my dear. It's true. And that girl was not a stranger. She was sleeping in your old room." My daughter screamed, "Jesus! Papa? Our Papa?" "Yes," I said calmly. "Your Papa." There was silence. Then she said, "Mama, come and stay with me. Leave that house. Leave him." "I will," I whispered. "I think it's time." That night, I packed a few of my clothes, took my diary, my Bible, and my dignity. I left the wedding pictures on the wall. Let him look at them. Let him remember. Let him sit there with pain between his legs and regret in his heart. I didn't leave with hate. I left with peace. He called me once the next morning. I didn't answer. He sent messages. Please, I'm sorry. I've learnt my lesson. But some lessons come too late. I blocked his number. And that was the day, Mama, Sarah started living again. I blocked his number. And that was the day, Mama, Sarah started living again. For the first time in over 40 years, I felt like I could finally breathe. It was like I had been holding my breath underwater, trying not to drown, and suddenly someone pulled me out and gave me air. I left the house that same day. I didn't even wait to see if he would crawl back home from the hospital. I didn't leave him a note. I didn't leave him food. I left him exactly what he left me with, nothing. My daughter, Nkechi, came with her husband to pick me up. She didn't say much in the car, but I saw the way she kept looking at me through the mirror. Mama, she finally said as we reached her compound. How did you know? I mean, how did you know he was cheating? I smiled gently. A woman always knows. The signs were there. I just stopped pretending not to see them. She nodded slowly. I'm sorry you had to go through that. I turned to her and said something I never thought I'd say in my lifetime. I'm not sorry. I'm glad I found out. And I'm glad I acted before it was too late. That night in her guest room, I lay on a clean bed with white sheets and soft pillows. There was no snoring beside me, no strange perfume, no fake smiles or hidden drawer keys, just me and the ceiling fan humming above. I slept like a baby. The next morning, my phone rang again. Unknown number. I let it ring. Then it rang again. I picked. Hello. Mama Sarah. The voice said low and cracked. I knew who it was. What do you want? I said, my voice firm. Please just let me talk. Please. I sighed. Go on. I messed up. I know. I've never been more ashamed in my life. The hospital released me. I'm back home. Alone. I can't walk properly. The pain is still there. Not just physical pain. The shame too. Neighbors won't look me in the eye. The young girl, she's gone. She blocked me. Her family is threatening to sue. Everything is falling apart. Please, Sarah, come home. Let's fix this. Please. I stayed quiet for a moment. Then I asked him one question. If I hadn't done what I did, would you have confessed? He paused. I don't know. I hung up. That was the answer I needed. I put my phone on silent and went to help my daughter in the kitchen. As I peeled yam, I told her, I think I want to file for divorce. She turned sharply. Are you sure? I am, I said. I've spent too many years in that house pretending I was happy. But now that I've tasted peace, I don't want to go back to pain. My daughter hugged me. Whatever you decide, Mama, we're with you. I never knew how much I needed to hear those words. Over the next few days, I started getting messages from people, family members, church women, even our pastor's wife. Mama Sarah, please forgive him. Men are like that. At your age, you want a divorce? Where will you go? Don't break the family. I smiled at all of them. I said thank you. And I continued with my plan. Because nobody knows the nights I cried on that cold pillow. Nobody knows the amount of respect I buried just to protect a man's name. Nobody knows how it feels to watch your own husband praise another woman's cooking in your kitchen. So no, I was not going back. I went to see a lawyer, a young woman named Miss Adora. She was sharp, fast, and kind. She said, Mama, we'll handle everything. Don't worry. I told her I didn't want much. I just wanted to be free. I wanted peace. I didn't want the house. I didn't want revenge. I just wanted my name back. She smiled and said, you'll have it. As we began the process, I decided to also take care of myself. I hadn't looked in a mirror properly in years. So I went to the salon, got a fresh hairdo, bought a few new wrappers, took pictures with my daughters. I even opened a small savings account. My son, the firstborn, called from Abuja. Mama, I heard everything. Why didn't you tell me? I told him, because I didn't want to poison your heart. But now that you know, I hope you learn from it. Don't do what your father did to your mother. He cried on the phone. Mama, I will never forgive him. I said, don't waste your life on bitterness. Just learn and do better. A few days later, I was sitting outside with my granddaughter, helping her with homework, when someone knocked at the gate. My daughter came out. It's Papa, she whispered. I stood up, walked to the gate, and there he was standing with his walking stick, face thinner, eyes red. Sarah, he said, I just came to talk. I folded my arms. Talk. I miss you. I miss us. I've changed. I've been praying. I'm ready to be a better man. At 70, I asked, you're just now ready to change? He looked down. I didn't know what I had until I lost it. Yes, I said, and now it's lost. Please, he begged, don't throw away 42 years. I said, you threw it away when you took that girl to the hotel. You buried it when you let her sleep in our daughter's bed. You burned it when you looked me in the eye and still lied. He knelt down, right there at the gate. Please forgive me, he whispered. I'm sick. I can't sleep. I've lost everything. I looked at him, and I truly felt nothing. Not hate, not pity, just nothing. I turned around and walked back into the house. My daughter closed the gate. He didn't knock again. The next day, I finalized the divorce papers. And just like that, I was free. 65 and free. I moved into a small flat of my own, decorated it with bright colors, put flowers by the window, bought a radio to play music in the mornings. My life was quiet now, but it was mine. No lies, no fear. One morning, I received a letter from his sister. It said, I heard what happened. You did what many women are afraid to do. You chose yourself. I respect you. I smiled. That was all I needed. Now, when people see me at the market, they say, Mama Sarah, you're glowing. And I just laugh. I don't explain. I don't gossip. I don't defend myself. I just live. Every day. Peacefully. That's how I knew. This story wasn't about a cheating man. It was about a woman who remembered who she was. It was about me. And I'll never forget it again. That's how I knew. This story wasn't about a cheating man. It was about a woman who remembered who she was. It was about me. And I'll never forget it again. Life after the divorce was strange at first. Quiet in a way I wasn't used to. For over 4 decades, my life was filled with someone else's footsteps, someone else's snoring, someone else's bad habits. Now, every sound in my flat belonged to me. The kettle boiling was mine. The cupboard door creaking was mine. The clock ticking on the wall ticked for me alone. It was scary and peaceful at the same time. But slowly that fear began to melt. I found beauty in the little things. I started waking up early just to sit by the window and watch the sunrise. The light would come through my curtains and land softly on my small table. I would sip my tea and say, God, I thank you. Not for money, not for anything big, just for peace. I joined a women's group in the neighborhood. They called it Golden Sisters. Mostly widows and retired women. At first, I just sat at the back and listened. I didn't say much, but one day, the topic was about second chances, and I felt something in my heart push me forward. I stood up and shared my story, the whole thing, from the lies to the glue. Every woman in that room was frozen. Some gasped. One even shouted, Jesus! But I didn't flinch. When I finished, there was silence. Then one woman clapped. Another followed, and another. Before I knew it, they were all on their feet, clapping for me like I was a champion. Some came to hug me. Others whispered, You're brave. That moment gave me strength I didn't know I still had. After that, people started coming to me for advice. A woman in her 50s told me her husband was seeing a girl from his office. Another said her own husband hadn't touched her in 8 years, but was suddenly smiling at a neighbor. I didn't tell them to use glue. No, I told them to open their eyes, to ask questions, to stop burying their pain under food and church songs. One day, I even had a young girl, barely 23, knock on my door. She said, "Mama Sarah, I watched your story on TikTok. My aunt sent it to me. I just want to say thank you. You taught me not to waste my youth on the wrong man." I laughed. TikTok? I didn't even know my story was there. Apparently, someone from the Golden Sisters had recorded me telling my story during the second meeting and uploaded it online. Over 2 million views, the girl said. I just covered my face and laughed. Me? An old woman trending online. But deep inside, I was proud, not because of the views, but because my pain helped someone. That's what pain should do, teach, not destroy. Around this time, something strange happened. My ex-husband's brother came to visit me. I hadn't seen him in years. He looked older, tired. He brought plantain and garden eggs, sat quietly on my couch like a man about to confess something. "Sister Sarah," he began, "I want to apologize on behalf of my brother. What he did was shameful. I didn't support it, but I also didn't stop it. And for that, I'm sorry." I didn't say anything. I just nodded. He continued, "He's not well. The injuries, they didn't heal properly. He walks with a limp now. He can't function properly again." I knew what he meant, but I didn't blink. He doesn't talk to anybody, just stays inside. He cries. He regrets. He says you were the only person who ever truly loved him. I finally spoke. Then why did he throw it away? My brother-in-law sighed. Some men are foolish, and some don't know they've ruined their life until it's too late. I looked at him and said, "I hope he finds peace. But I'm done. That chapter is closed." He nodded slowly, stood up, and said, "You're stronger than anyone I know." After he left, I sat down with the plantain in my hand and thought about how far I'd come. From that woman who used to cry silently while washing boxers to the woman who now made grown men walk into her living room and apologize. I was no longer a wife. I was no longer a victim. I was something more, something freer. That week, my children surprised me. All 3 of them came together. My son flew in from Abuja. My 2 daughters came with their children. They cooked, cleaned, and filled my little flat with laughter. They said, "Mama, we want to celebrate you." I asked why. They replied, "Because you never celebrated yourself." That evening we danced, played music. My granddaughter drew a crown on paper and put on my head. She said, "Queen Mama Sarah." I laughed till my stomach hurt. I hadn't felt that kind of joy in years. After the party, my son sat beside me. He looked serious. "Mama," he said, "I want to ask you something." "Go ahead." "Did you plan it? The glue?" I looked at him, smiled. "Yes." His mouth fell open. "Mama," I said. He wanted to treat me like a fool, but I reminded him that old women are not stupid. We just wait for the right moment. He laughed so hard, he almost fell off the chair. "You're a legend, Mama." I nodded. That's what they say now. A few days later, I got invited to a women's conference. They asked me to speak. Me, a woman who spent most of her life cooking and folding clothes. Now standing on stage, microphone in hand. I wore my best wrapper, tied my scarf high. When I stood in front of that crowd, I looked around and said, "I am not here because I am special. I am here because I said enough." The crowd was silent. Then I told them everything. Not just the glue, but the nights I sat by the window wondering if I was invisible. The birthdays he forgot. The money I had to beg for. The way I stopped recognizing myself in the mirror. And then how I got it all back. Not by fighting him, but by choosing me. When I finished, people cried. Women hugged me. A woman with gray hair said, "I wish I heard this story 20 years ago." Another said, "You saved me from poisoning myself." That night I cried too, not because I was sad, but because I finally knew I hadn't suffered for nothing. My story had become someone else's survival, and that's how I knew I had a mission. So I started a small group, just 10 women. We met once a week, shared stories, laughed, cried, prayed. Some were still married, some were separated, some were just tired. But in that room, we were all equals. We were all healing. One day, one of them asked, "Mama Sarah, if you could go back in time, would you still marry him?" I thought long and hard. Then I said, yes, because I wouldn't be who I am without the fire, but I would leave earlier. They nodded. We understood each other. Fire doesn't always destroy. Sometimes it purifies. These days, I walk around the market and people greet me with smiles. "Mama Sarah." The glue woman. I just wave. Sometimes I buy oranges and the seller says, "No need to pay. Your story helped my wife forgive herself." I never expected this, but I welcome it because for the first time in my life, I'm not just someone's wife. I'm a voice, a warning, a light. One evening, as I sat by my window watching the sun go down, I whispered, "God, I'm ready for the next chapter." Not with a man, not with marriage, just with life, just me, the real me, the one who was hiding for too long, the one who finally stepped into her own story. And this time, she's not stepping out. So that evening, as I sat by my window watching the sun go down, I whispered, "God, I'm ready for the next chapter." Not with a man, not with marriage, just with life, just me, the real me, the one who was hiding for too long, the one who finally stepped into her own story. And this time, she's not stepping out. After the women's conference, things changed faster than I expected. I started receiving calls, radio stations, church groups, even a lawyer who said, "Mama Sarah, my client runs a show about strong African women. She'd like to feature you." I laughed. I said, "Me? A 65-year-old woman with back pain and rappers?" The lawyer said, "Yes, you." At first, I hesitated. I wasn't looking for fame. I didn't want to be on camera. I didn't want the world to point at me and say, "That's the woman who trapped her husband with glue." But then something happened. I got a handwritten letter from a girl named Ngozi, 17 years old. She wrote, "Dear Mama Sarah, I heard your story. My father beats my mother and cheats on her every day. She wanted to take her own life, but then she saw you. She smiled for the first time in months. Mama, you saved her, and you saved me. Thank you." I read that letter over and over again. Then I wiped my eyes and said, "Okay, if my voice can save just one more woman, then let them record me." The TV show came to my flat. Big cameras, lights, microphones. I wore my best head tie and sat in front of that camera like I had been doing it my whole life. They asked questions. I answered everything. They asked, "Why didn't you just leave quietly?" I said, "Because some men only understand shame. Quiet pain does not change a wicked man. Public disgrace sometimes does." They asked, "Do you regret it?" I said, "No. I regret staying too long. I regret the years I spent praying for someone who was busy unzipping his trousers in hotel rooms." After that episode aired, everything exploded. My phone didn't stop ringing. Strangers were sending me messages. Some called me evil. Others called me a hero. But I didn't care about the noise. I only cared about the ones who whispered, "Thank you." You don't value gold until you lose it. One afternoon, I got a surprise visitor. It was the young girl. Yes, the same girl he brought into our house. She stood in front of me, shaking. Her clothes were simple. She looked thinner, sadder. We stared at each other for a long time. Then she dropped to her knees. "Mama, I'm sorry. I didn't speak. I didn't know he was married. He told me you were dead. He said he was lonely. He said you were wicked. I was stupid. I was greedy. I ruined your home." Still, I didn't speak. She continued, "I thought he would marry me. But after the hospital, after everything, he started blaming me. He became bitter, angry. I lost my job. My friends laughed at me. Nobody wants to touch me. I can't sleep. I cry every day. Mama, please, please forgive me. I looked down at her, and in that moment, I saw what she really was, a lost, foolish girl who met a man old enough to be her father and believed his sweet lies. She wasn't the devil. He was. He knew exactly what he was doing. I reached out and touched her head. Stand up, my daughter. She looked up, shocked. You're not angry? I said, I've already forgiven you. A long time ago. I just needed to forgive myself first. She hugged my legs and wept. That day I made her food, gave her some money, told her, go and start again. You are not finished, but never, ever break another woman's home again. Some women will not use glue. Some will use something worse. She nodded, tears all over her face. When she left, I sat down and exhaled deeply. That was the closure I didn't even know I needed. My phone buzzed again that evening. Another church invited me to speak. But this time it was not just women. The theme was men who break homes. When I walked in, there were over 300 people waiting. Men, women, teenagers. Some clapped when they saw me. Some folded their arms like they came to attack me. I went on stage and said, I am not here to attack men. I am here to teach. I spoke about trust, about love, about what it means to stand beside someone for 40 years only to be left behind for a girl who doesn't even know how to boil yam. I told them, if you are tired of your wife, say it. Don't lie. Don't cheat. Don't break her and expect her to continue smiling. You are not God. One man stood up and shouted, you're encouraging women to rebel. I looked him dead in the eye and said, no, I'm encouraging them to stop dying in silence. The crowd clapped. Even some men nodded. After that, a man walked up to me outside and whispered, I stopped cheating because of you. I looked at him and said, good. Don't stop for me. Stop for your wife, for your children, for your soul. Weeks passed. My small flat became a mini counseling center. Women knocked at my door. Girls sent me letters. Widows invited me to events. I even got a call from abroad, Germany. A Nigerian woman there watched my video and cried for hours. She said, I've been living like a ghost, but you reminded me that I am still alive. All this from one bottle of glue, one decision to say enough, one moment of boldness. Life is funny. People say you have to be young to make a difference. But here I was, 65, with weak knees and reading glasses, becoming a voice for people all over the world. One afternoon, as I was sorting rice in my tray, my daughter, Nkechi, came in smiling. Mama, you have a letter. From who? I asked. It's from the Ministry of Women Affairs. I paused, took the envelope, opened it. Inside was an invitation. They were awarding me something called the Resilience Star, for courage, strength, and contribution to women's empowerment. I blinked. Me? She nodded. Yes, Mama. You. I was quiet for a long time. Then I started laughing. So, glue brought me honor? My daughter laughed too. You didn't just use glue, Mama. You used your voice. At the award ceremony, I wore a gold wrapper and matching head tie. My grandchildren helped me walk to the stage. The whole room stood up, applauding, cameras flashing. When I received the award, I held the mic and said, this is not just for me. This is for every woman who cried in silence, every wife who thought she wasn't enough, every girl who thought her value ended with a man's attention. You are enough. You are not crazy, and you deserve peace. The crowd went wild. Later, a woman whispered, Mama Sarah, you're our very own legend. I smiled and said, I'm just a woman who finally stood up. When I returned home that night, I sat in the dark for a while. No radio, no TV, just me and the sound of crickets. I thought about everything. The betrayal, the hospital, the shame, the healing, the victory. And I whispered, thank you, God. I understand now. I had to be broken to become a builder. That night, I didn't dream. I just slept, peacefully, like a woman who finally remembered her own name. Mama Sarah, the woman who didn't just survive. She rose. That night, I didn't dream. I just slept, peacefully, like a woman who finally remembered her own name. Mama Sarah, the woman who didn't just survive. She rose. And in the days that followed, I noticed something I hadn't expected. More and more men started coming to me. Quietly, privately, not to attack or insult me, but to confess, to ask questions, to apologize. One came with his head down, holding a loaf of bread like a peace offering. He said, "Mama, I used to laugh at your story. I used to call you wicked. But after my own wife left me last month, I finally understand what I put her through. I lost a good woman. I just didn't know how to say sorry until now." I listened. I didn't speak for a while. Then I said, "Regret is a heavy thing. Carry it long enough, and it will break your back. But change is lighter. Choose it now." He nodded. He left. Another came 2 days later. This one was younger, maybe in his 30s. He sat on my plastic chair, fidgeting. "Mama Sarah, my mother lived your life. My father cheated, beat her, insulted her. She stayed till she died. I hated him for it, but now I'm scared I'm turning into him. I have a good woman. I lie to her. I sneak around. I don't even know why." I looked at him and said, "Because pain is like inheritance. If you don't reject it, you will pass it on. But it's not too late. Go and fix it. Don't let your child sit in front of a stranger one day, confessing your mistakes." He cried, right there, that same chair, and I realized something. My story wasn't just saving women. It was calling men to account. And that, to me, was a miracle. One Sunday morning, I got ready for church. It had been a while. The last time I went, I had been sitting quietly in the second row, hiding my pain under a ghillie and pretending my husband wasn't sleeping with someone who wore pink lipstick in my house. Now I was walking in proudly, head high, no shame. My daughters walked beside me. My son had even flown down from Abuja just to sit with me that day. As we entered the church, heads turned. Whispers started. I heard someone say, "That's her, the woman from TV." Another whispered, "That's the glue woman, oh." I didn't mind. Call me whatever you want. Just don't call me a fool again. When it was time for testimonies, I stood up. My son tried to hold me down. "Mama, no need." I smiled. There's always a need to thank God. I walked to the altar slowly. The mic was cold in my hand. I looked at the crowd and said, "Some of you know me. Some of you think you know me. But today, let me introduce myself. I am Sarah. I am 65. I was married for 42 years. I raised 3 children. I cooked. I cleaned. I prayed. I stayed faithful. But my husband did not." The room went quiet. You could hear a pin drop. I continued. He brought another woman into my home. Lied to her. Lied to me. Lied to himself. And when I found out, I didn't fight him with blows. I fought with silence and wisdom. And yes, I swapped his lube for glue. That's the part many of you know. But what you don't know is what happened after. I left. I healed. I forgave. I rose. And now women from around the world are standing up because one woman chose herself. Some mouths were open. Some people were blinking like they couldn't believe I was saying all this in church. But others clapped. A few women even stood up, tears in their eyes. I handed back the mic and walked back to my seat. That day I felt God smiling. Not because I was perfect, but because I was finally honest. After service, many women came to hug me. One even said, "I stayed with a man who beat me for 17 years because I was scared of shame. But today, I realized the real shame is dying quietly." I hugged her tight. That day, I didn't go straight home. My son took me out to a small restaurant by the roadside. We ate jollof rice and suya. As we ate, he looked at me and said, "Mama, I used to be ashamed of what happened. But now I tell people proudly, that's my mother, the woman who turned her pain into power. I smiled. My chest was full. Later that evening, back in my room, I brought out my old diary, the one I used to hide under my pillow, the one where I wrote down every lie, every late night, every strange perfume, every wound. I read some pages. My handwriting was shaky back then. You could feel the sadness in the way I wrote. But then I flipped to the last page. It was blank. I took a pen and wrote one sentence. I forgive you, but I will never return to you. Then I closed the diary for good. Around that time, my ex-husband sent a letter. He said he heard I was giving speeches, that people were calling me strong, that the world was clapping for me. He wrote, "It hurts, Sarah. It hurts that you're becoming great while I'm shrinking. But I deserve it. I know I do. Still, part of me misses you. Not for what you did for me, but for who you were. I hope, one day, you can smile when you think of me." I folded the letter and placed it in a box. I didn't cry. I didn't smile. I just felt still. He was right about one thing. He didn't miss what I did. He missed the version of me he could control. And that version no longer existed. A few weeks later, my daughter brought a small notebook to me. "Mama," she said, "people are asking for your book. They want to read your full story. Will you write it?" I said, "Why not?" So I began. Page by page, I wrote everything. The lies, the shame, the glue, the freedom. Every word came out like it had been waiting years to escape. When it was done, we titled it, "Bound but Not Broken." It went online. Women bought it. Men read it secretly. And my name, Mama Sarah, became something more. It became a symbol, not of revenge, but of rising. And here's the funny part. I never set out to be famous. I never planned to go viral. All I wanted was peace. All I wanted was dignity. But God said, "Let your pain be a pulpit." And so here I am, speaking, teaching, living. One morning, I got a message from a woman in Canada. She said, "I was going to kill myself. My husband had taken everything. But then I heard you say, 'You are not finished.' And I changed my mind." That day I cried, not because I was sad, but because I realized my story had saved a life, and that is bigger than any award. That is healing. That is purpose. And that is why I will never regret the glue. Because it was never about the glue. It was about waking up, about choosing myself, about saying no more. And if you're watching this now and you're in a dark place, thinking nobody sees you, let me tell you, stand up, speak out, cry if you need to, but don't stay broken. You are not mad. You are not weak. You are not alone. If I could find my voice at 65, so can you. My name is Mama Sarah. I was betrayed. I was broken, but I did not stay there. I rose, and now I'm building a table where other women can sit and eat freedom. So ask yourself, when will you rise too? So ask yourself, when will you rise too? Because the truth is, life will not wait for you to be ready. You have to be the one to stand up, even if your legs are shaking. And as the days passed, I saw more clearly that this story was no longer just about me. It had become a movement. I started getting invited to schools, not just universities, even secondary schools and girls' colleges. They wanted me to talk to the young ones, to warn them, to protect them, to tell them what love is and what love is not. And every time I stood in front of those girls, wearing their white socks and big eyes full of questions, I remembered my younger self. The girl who thought being a good wife meant losing your voice. The girl who believed silence was strength. I told those girls, don't ever shrink yourself to make someone else feel big. Don't stay where you're not respected. You are not an extension of any man's pride. You are a full person, with dreams, with worth. And if someone cannot love you fully, let them go. One girl stood up and said, "Auntie, what if we fall for the wrong man before we know he's wrong?" I smiled and said, "Then you rise again. You learn, and you become wiser. Mistakes don't make you less. They just make you human. And those girls clapped, some even crying. I knew that moment would stay with them, and it would stay with me. At home, life became even more peaceful. I started planting small flowers in the back of my flat. Hibiscus, bitter leaf, even tomatoes. My grandchildren would come and help me water them. And one day my granddaughter Amara asked, "Grandma, why do you always smile now?" I bent down, touched the soil, and said, "Because I finally found my garden." She tilted her head. "But you had a house before." I looked at her and said, "I had a house, yes, but not a home. Peace makes a place a home. And now I have peace." She hugged me tight. Those words stayed in my spirit. I began to see how many women were living in houses but not in homes. How many were crying beside men who didn't deserve their tears. And I knew I had to keep speaking, keep planting seeds, keep building hope. One Sunday afternoon, a call came from an organization in Ghana. They were holding a women's conference in Accra and wanted me to attend as a keynote speaker. I laughed. "Me? Ghana?" They said yes. They even booked my flight, hotel, everything. That was the first time I ever entered a plane. At 65, imagine that. As we took off, I held my daughter's hand tightly. She laughed. "Mama, relax." I said, "I'm not scared. I'm just amazed." All this from one decision. When we arrived, the air felt different. New, like life was giving me a second chance to see the world. The conference was massive. Thousands of women, cameras, lights, and there I was, sitting among them like an ordinary woman with an extraordinary story. When it was time to speak, they played a short video of my journey. The clips, the newspaper headlines, the book cover, even the funny TikTok videos people had made acting out the glue incident. Everyone laughed, then clapped, and when I walked to the stage, they all stood, a standing ovation for a woman who used to cry silently in her kitchen. I took the mic and said, "I'm not here because I'm perfect. I'm here because I survived. I'm here because I stayed too long and still found the courage to walk away. I'm here because I found my voice buried under insults and lies. And I'm here to tell you you can find yours too." The applause shook the whole hall. Some women wiped their eyes. Some shouted. Some reached out their hands. That was the day I realized something deeper. This story, my story, was not just about men who cheat. It was about women who forget themselves. It was about coming back home to your own spirit. The next day, a woman approached me in the hotel lobby. She said, "Mama Sarah, I'm a pastor's wife. I've been dying inside, but now I want to live again. Thank you." I held her hand and said, "God will never punish you for choosing peace. Go." And she left with a new light in her eyes. When I returned home to Nigeria, the airport workers recognized me. One of them whispered, "That's Mama Sarah, the one who showed them pepper." I laughed so hard. Life had truly changed. A few days later, I received a letter from the Ministry of Justice. They wanted me to be part of a task force that helps abused women get legal support. Imagine that. Me, a woman who used to be afraid of police stations, now helping women get justice. I accepted the offer. We started visiting women in small towns, places where no cameras go, places where women are still forced to marry men 3 times their age, places where beating is called discipline. We listened to them. We gave them hope. We gave them lawyers. And every time they asked, "Why are you doing this?" I said, "Because I wish someone had done it for me." And slowly, change began. One woman left her abuser and started a sewing business. Another started teaching girls in her village. All of them carried a piece of my voice inside them. One day, while walking back from the market, I saw my ex-husband sitting on a bench, alone, his head bent. He looked smaller, like life had pressed him down. I didn't plan to stop, but something in me said, "Go." I walked up and stood in front of him. He looked up slowly, His eyes filled with guilt. "Sarah," he said softly. I nodded. "How are you?" He swallowed. "Empty." I sat down beside him, for the first time in years. We didn't speak for a few minutes, just sat there. Then he said, "I lost everything. You, the children, my job, my name. I thought I was strong, but I was just selfish." I looked at him and said, "You weren't just selfish. You were cruel. But I forgive you." His eyes widened. "Truly?" "Yes," I said, "but forgiveness is not permission. I will never come back. I will never cook for you again. But I wish you peace. I hope you find healing. I hope you become a better man before your last breath." He nodded, tears falling. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me. I just didn't know it then." I stood up. "Goodbye." And I walked away, not with anger, not with pity, but with power, because I knew now that closure isn't about what they say. It's about what you decide to carry. And I was done carrying his weight. That evening, I made okra soup and ate alone in my kitchen. I lit a small candle and prayed, "Thank you, God, not just for taking me out, but for showing me who I really am." And I knew, deep in my soul, that I had finally reached the other side of pain, the place where healing lives, the place where you no longer flinch when someone mentions their name, the place where your laughter returns, full and free. And I smiled, because after all the storms, I had become my own sunshine. Because after all the storms, I had become my own sunshine. And once you've tasted peace like that, once your spirit stretches and breathes fully for the first time in decades, there's no going back. Not to shame, not to silence, not to smallness. My story had traveled farther than my feet could ever reach. Every day I woke up to a new message, from women in Sudan, Uganda, Kenya, Canada, and even women in prison who said, "Mama Sarah, your story gave us light in this dark place." I didn't plan for it. I didn't chase it. But purpose has a way of finding those who survive fire and still choose to rise. My small flat was now filled with letters, gifts, wrappers, books, and flowers from strangers who saw me not as a joke, but as proof that healing was possible. And then one day, I got the call I never expected. It was from the office of the First Lady of Nigeria. I sat frozen as the woman on the phone said, "Madam Sarah, we would like to honor you during our Women of Strength Gala in Abuja. The First Lady herself has been following your journey. She says you have changed lives." I almost dropped the phone. I looked around my kitchen like someone was playing a prank on me. I whispered, "The First Lady?" She said, "Yes, Ma. You will receive the National Medal for Civil Courage." My chest was tight. My hands were shaking. I had never imagined that one day I, a woman who once begged for attention in her own home, would be invited to the nation's highest table for women. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept remembering the days I used to cry beside a husband who came home smelling like another woman's perfume. The days I held on, even when I was being held in contempt. I looked at my hands. These hands had scrubbed floors, peeled yam, washed boxers, stained by lies. Now they would receive a medal. God truly lifts those who are crushed. I arrived in Abuja with my daughters and son. The hotel was beautiful, too beautiful. I kept looking around like a village girl who had never seen a golden sink before. My son laughed. "Mama, you deserve this and more." I nodded slowly. "Yes, I do." The gala night came fast. Big chandeliers, red carpets, powerful women in lace and gelly, flashing cameras. I wore a gold and white wrapper, my signature head tie, and a necklace my first daughter bought from Enugu. When I stepped into the hall, people started clapping. Not because I was rich, not because I was famous, but because they knew what it meant to survive what I survived and still stand tall. When they called my name, Sarah Okonkwo, Civil Courage Medal, I walked slowly to the stage. The First Lady stood with open arms. She hugged me like a daughter would hug a mother. Then she whispered in my ear, You are the voice many women needed. Thank you for not staying silent. I took the mic, looked at the crowd, and I said, you all know the story, so I won't repeat it. But let me say this, when I swapped that lube for glue, I didn't know it would free me. I thought I was punishing him, but it was God using that moment to wake me up. To tell me, Sarah, it is enough. Come out. I didn't just leave a man. I left shame. I left silence. I left fear. And if I can do it at 65, then my sisters, you can do it too. The applause shook the room. I saw grown women crying. I saw men nodding. I saw daughters holding their mothers tightly. That night, I felt like a seed that had finally blossomed. After the event, as we walked back to the hotel, my son said, "Mama, you're a national hero." I smiled. I'm just a woman who said no, and meant it. A few weeks later, back home, a journalist came to interview me. She was young, sharp, and full of energy. She asked, "Mama Sarah, if you could speak to your younger self, the woman who was still holding on to a broken marriage, what would you say to her?" I looked at the ceiling, took a deep breath, and said, I'd say, "You are enough. Your silence will not make him change. Your suffering will not make him love you more. You are not weak for walking away. You are wise. Get up. Go. Breathe." She wiped her eyes. "That's powerful." I said, "It took me 42 years to learn it. I hope it doesn't take the next girl that long." Later that day, I received a call from a hospital. Not a hospital from anywhere nearby. It was the very hospital where they had pulled my ex-husband apart from that girl. The same place where it all exploded. The nurse on the line said, "Mama Sarah, I don't know if you remember me. I was on duty the day you came." I laughed. I remember everything. She said, "We now use your story as a case study for relationship awareness and emotional abuse training." I blinked. "Me?" She said, "Yes, Ma. You saved more than one life that day." I dropped the phone and covered my mouth. From pain to policy, from shame to syllabus, God was not just restoring me, He was using me. That evening, I received news that shook me to my bones. My ex-husband had collapsed. Stroke. He was in critical condition. For a moment, I didn't feel anything. Not fear, not joy, just stillness. My daughter asked, "Mama, should we go and see him?" I paused, then said, "Yes, I need to." When we reached the hospital, he was hooked to tubes, silent, weak. His eyes opened slowly when he saw me. I walked to him, sat by the bed. For a while, we just looked at each other. Then he moved his hand a little and tried to speak. His mouth barely opened. "Sarah," I touched his hand. "I'm here." He started crying, not from pain, from regret. I could feel it in the room. I leaned in and said, "I forgive you again, fully, but I'm not yours anymore. I was never meant to die in silence. You taught me what I don't deserve, and for that I thank you." He nodded, a small, weak nod. Then his eyes closed again. I left the room, slowly, quietly, and as I stepped out, I felt something leave my chest. A final burden. Gone. 2 days later, he passed. Quietly, without much noise. He left the world with many mistakes, but also with one final lesson. Never take for granted the person who prays for you. I didn't go for the burial. My children handled everything. I didn't want closure in a coffin. I already had mine in a hospital room. Days after, people came to greet me. Some expected me to cry. I didn't. I cooked for them, smiled, and when they left, I played my favorite radio station and danced alone in my living room. Because death didn't make me a widow. Betrayal already did. But now I was free. Fully. Truly. And forever. And if you're still listening to my story, I want you to remember this. Your peace is worth fighting for. Your voice is worth using. And your joy, it is not a luxury. It is your right. So rise. Cry if you must. But rise. Laugh again. Dance again. And if anyone ever makes you feel small, just remember me. Mama Sarah, the woman who swapped lube for glue and found her crown in the process.